A new football league played its inaugural games this week, and we are here to talk about it. The NBA trade deadline also passed, and there was some serious hate going around the league on two specific players that I want to talk about and why that hate was unwarranted. To close out the show, we're going to be talking about what's going on in sports, just around the league, around the leagues, and I've got a special game we're going to play. It's about failure and how we've all done it. But these specific entities have done it significantly more, and honestly, they went up in flames. So it's going to be fun to talk about them too. So here we go. This is a Chris Rennie show. Let's get into it. I can't do this anymore. What's this guy saying? Who gave these national radio hosts these jobs? Jeez. Can't even understand that guy. What's he even talking about? I can't take it anymore. Those national media personalities making you feel like that. Make a change. Listen to this idiot about the sports that matter from the opinion that matters.
It is showtime, everybody get excited. It is the Chris Rennie Show. Let's see what number we're
opinionated
on.
Host in sports
Episode
talk.
7. Wow. Already back to episode 7. Man, this week. The first week without football. It's crazy. So the first day, that Monday after the Super Bowl, is always the toughest. You know, you wake up, you eat the chicken fingers, the chicken wings, you drink the beers, the silver bullets, you know. Your weekend ritual for like 20, 21 weeks in a row. No questions asked. You know, you watch college football Saturday, you watch the NFL Sunday. Then the NFL comes on Monday night, and you're like, yeah, I'll tune into it. That's what I did. Then Thursday night comes, you're like, oh, it's an interesting game. I'll watch that one too. So that realization that you know that not Monday, not Thursday, not Saturday, not Sunday, that football isn't coming back for real, not the NFL, not college, is tough. There's a major void. So it's like when it inevitably came to fruition that was going to be the case, that there was not going to be a football game from the NFL or college football. It was like, wow, there goes my life. Kenny Chesney style. So I woke up with one last purpose. I had to do my Super Bowl review and then prepare for a show later that week that I always do this time of year to fill that void. And that's sort of what I did. The second day. That day was hell. That was a Tuesday. People were talking about contracts, the NFL draft already. I'm like, wow. That's an abyss. It's been left in my life. I'm not ready for draft talk. I want more games. I want more stories. I want Patrick Mahomes slinging that ball sidearmed, underhand, now apparently behind the back. He's trying to get that installed. That would have been fun to see this year, but we got to wait till next year now. You know, the Browns, they didn't end on a strong note. They had a worse season than their 7-8-1 season. It sucked, you know? I know a lot of fans, every fan base leaves the year unhappy. And if you don't win the Super Bowl, your year was a failure. That's sort of how it goes, right? So yes, that second day is where you come to that realization, like, man, my team still sucks. Or my team's just not good enough yet. And that's a tough realization. So you know what I did? I dove into draft previews. I dove into recruiting rankings. I did so much research into recruiting. Just 5-year histories. I'm making a spreadsheet, a long spreadsheet, so I have it for this fall football season. Trying to work on a written piece for my Without Winners blog on football recruiting, but you know, so many good ones have already been done that I feel like I'm talking nonsense compared to some of these better recruiting writers. But if I want to get into sports talk and sports writing, I got to start writing more pieces on college football and the NFL. So the third day, draft talk, oh my God, yes, draft talk, we're excited. Then I realized, so when I was looking into draft stuff, I started realizing the Browns are pretty far down the board. You know,
the 2020 draft is not for the Browns. It's one of those aspects, we've got the Browns have 6 picks. Our first pick, I believe, is at the 10th pick in the draft. So, round 1, it's going to be the Browns need to fill a void. They need to get a left tackle to protect Baker Mayfield. I know a lot of teams I never thought being in this middle area sucked so bad. But it's like when you were 0-16 and 1-15 Browns, it was easy to get excited for the draft because you're like, finally, the franchise changer's coming. All that fun stuff. You get all these teams, and then you get the Browns at 10. They're 6-10. You know what? At 10, it's not exciting, being the 10th pick in the draft. That's not exciting. That's not being the first pick. It's not. It's being the 10th pick. It's not being the 32nd pick, or the 31st pick. You guys just played for the Super Bowl. Yeah, it sucks you lost, but you got a lot to look forward to. Being that 27th pick, it's like, what? What's the point of drafting, Yeah, we're going to find someone. We're the Seahawks. 24th pick, the Saints. What are you going to do? Add more offensive talent? Nowhere to go. The 10th. We can get worse. Got a long way to go before we're good. That's what it feels like. So you go back. Now, the 4th day, I did a podcast about the 8 teams who can win a natty. So that filled the void pretty well, actually. The 5th day, I was just bored. I was thinking about, man, that podcast, I could have done a little better. Made it a little shorter, a little bit more concise. Start thinking about the little things in your shows. It's not fun. The stories aren't written for you. You got to start finding content to create. It's a lot harder, But this is where I'm going to see how talented I could actually be at podcasting, at the radio, hosting sort of job, all that fun stuff. And it was boring, I'm trying to come up with ideas for next week. It's hard. But, some stuff happened, the trade deadline. There's some very serious conversations that need to be had. And then the 6th day happened. And then, you heard about it. You knew it was coming. The XFL, that Vince McMahon wrestling, raw, And, you heard throughout, you've got Oliver Luck running the thing. You see those interviews. Oliver Luck, we're putting an emphasis on player safety and creating a family-friendly environment. We want to have low-cost tickets so people can attend the games. I know that's been a big gripe with the NFL, so yeah. And then we're going to have a really awesome TV sort of gig. We're going to be on ABC, 2 p.m. Eastern. Not too late. You're not going to miss much in your afternoon if you watch it on the East Coast. You're still going to be able to go out at night and get stuff done in the morning. I went to the dentist Saturday. I had an infection in my mouth. It's amazing I'm doing this show now. Shout out to penicillin. But I was still able to get back by 2 and watch the games, The 7 o'clock games, they weren't really for me. There wasn't really anything driving me to the TV screens for those ones. But I did tune into the DC Defenders. I did tune in to the New York Guardians. And they were fun games. So yes, on the 6th day, the goddamn XFL came. And it made me happy. It was football. I was seeing players I hadn't heard the names of for years. Aaron Murray. Did you know he leads the SEC in all of the real passing stats? That's crazy. So yeah, the XFL is great this weekend. I'm going to be talking about that on the show today. But the void of football has been filled for 10 more weeks. And then, we got the NBA playoffs after that, so it fills that nice void, where the NBA still sucks. And then it gets you to baseball. And it gets you past spring training, so that's going to be nice. It's going to get you right to spring training or right past it. I can't remember the exact days the XFL ends. But, it fills that weird February, that weird March you have before the NBA gets real exciting and before Major League Baseball starts. So now the one thing we need to fill is that middle of summer, you know? And I'm thinking maybe like you get arena football back, or maybe you get maybe I get more into soccer. You know, that's something I could do. I get more into soccer. You know, UFC's got some big summer fights coming. I know that UFC 250 is going to be in the summer. So that'll be cool. So there's going to be a lot of big sporting stuff to talk about. I know that's when the NBA free agency takes off. That's more interesting than the NBA season, isn't it, really? You know, that's kind of bad for the NBA. The NFL gets into training camp, you know, end of July, August. So that'll be fun. You got the NFL draft. You've got, you know, you're going to have those things happen where, like, a player gets drunk and crashes his car. You're going to talk about that. I'm going to play a lot of games, top 10 rankings, top 5 lists. I've got my first top 5 list today. So, yeah, we'll get into that. But first, let's get into this NBA trade deadline talk. So, I'm not going to talk about the whole NBA trade deadline because, honestly, it was pretty boring this year. My favorite team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, you know, it wasn't very eventful. The Cavs traded for Andre Drummond. He's a pretty solid player. So, I guess that's cool. Marcus Morris headed to the Clippers to lose to LeBron again in the playoffs, so we'll see that. The Timberwolves made a pretty nice trade. Or not the Timberwolves did make a pretty nice trade. That's going to be the one I talk about the most. But the Heat and the Grizzlies trade was pretty interesting. I think the Grizzlies adding Dion Waiters and Justice Winslow for Andre Iguodala can literally change the Grizzlies franchise. I think you get experience there to go with your two young players in Ja Morant and what's his name? I can't remember his name. Dylan Brooks, I think it is. He's been playing pretty well. Yeah, Dylan Brooks. That's the other guy. So you get these two young guys who have played pretty solid basketball, just in general, to Memphis. I don't know where Memphis stands in the rankings, but I know every night I'm turning on SportsCenter or ESPN, I'm seeing a Ja Morant highlight. So, yeah, you know, you get these younger guys. Now, Dion Waiters has been pretty inconsistent in his career, but he's a guy who can shoot, he can add, he can fill it up pretty quick, you know, and that's not something you can teach. They are the 8th seed in the Western Conference, so this is a move that could really solidify their standing in the NBA. And I think adding Justice Winslow, who has not lived up to that lofty potential he had coming out of Duke, is huge. So I think that's one of the better trades I saw this deadline. You know, there's a lot of other ones. But the three biggest ones were the Grizzlies deal, the Cavs deal, and the D'Angelo Russell and Wiggins trade deal. So when you look at those three, those are the ones where legitimately big-name players were moved. There's a lot of drama surrounding the Memphis Grizzlies one. The Pistons trading Drummond came as like a little bit of a surprise, but really it's not like it's that crazy. You know, I think the Cavs did a great job getting Drummond and trading Brandon Knight and John Henson with a 2023 second-round pick is not much. You're not really rarely you ever get anything with a second-round pick. It's in the future. You'll be able to accumulate that back in probably a Kevin Love trade or something along those lines. You know, he doesn't really fit into what's going on in Cleveland. You know, you got Drummond now, you got Nance now, you've got Love, you got Tristan Thompson. So you've got 4 bigs playing down there. So I think realistically this trade is more just to sort of see how everything fits together moving forward. I think a Kevin Love, Andre Drummond, power forward, center battery is pretty solid. I think you can play a lot with that. And then I think with the Colin Sextons, the Darius Garlands on the Cavs, there's a lot, you know. But the part on this one that confuses me is, you know, the Pistons get rid of their one legitimate star they've had for like since the Rasheed Wallace, Chauncey Billups teams, you know. So he's 26. He's good. He was Detroit's only All-Star from 2010 to 2018, according to this report on NBA.com. The Pistons have never really been very good. I guess Detroit, this says they're building for the future for Michael C. Wright. I don't really see that. You don't really trade Brandon Knight and John Henson for the future. You don't really get a 2023 pick for the future. I think you could have got a lot more for Drummond. So yeah, he's a 3-month lease. I guess you get another expiring contract for expiring contracts in Cleveland. So this one was pretty dumb, honestly. It was a pointless trade, but I guess it was fun to talk about. I think the Cavs might win a couple more games just from the rebounding, second chance points. But that's where that one ends. The other one that was really interesting that I want to talk about a little was the Andre Iguodala trade before I get into the major trade. So Andre Iguodala said he was not going to play a game for the Memphis Grizzlies and he wanted to be bought out or traded. The Grizzlies initially said, we don't have to do that, dude. So, Andre Iguodala's like, yeah, you do. This is a player-friendly league now. And the Grizzlies were like, you're kind of right, but we still own your contract. Like, you have to play for us. And then he was like, no, I don't. I'm sitting out. I will take the whole year off. Trade me. So, obviously, the Grizzlies did not have to trade him. They ended up doing it. But the only reason they did, all right, and I think this is where I think the Grizzlies won this trade. Absolutely. The Grizzlies won this trade. The Heat got desperate, all right. I don't know why they made this move. So this is the trade. This is who was traded. So Jay Crowder and Solomon Hill are going to join Iguodala in Miami, all right? Memphis is going to get Justice Winslow, Dion Waiters, and James Johnson, all right? So that's a pretty good haul for the Grizzlies for almost nothing. All right, now Jay Crowder's a solid player. He had just got into that fight. James Johnson's a pretty good three-point shooter. He ended up getting flipped and turned into another player in this trade. And yeah, so, you sort of get that right. And then Johnson, so he got traded to the Timberwolves for Gorgui Dieng. So now you get rid of this shooter and trade him to a team that needs an outside shooter. And you get a strong forward, a power forward, Gorgui Dieng, which is awesome for the Grizzlies. This is what they needed. Solomon Hill was not tough. Jay Crowder acted tough. So now they've got a legitimate tough player, Justice Winslow, an extremely versatile defender, and Dion Waiters, a registered bucket getter. Now, Andre Iguodala is coming off a broken leg. He was let go from the Warriors, and he signed a 2-year, $30 million extension with them. So yes, what Miami's looking for is leadership. And Miami got that in Andre Iguodala, but does he fit into that culture in Miami that they've sort of built? I don't really see it. Jimmy Butler, Miami's young core, Tyler Hero, whoever, all those guys, they're playing well. Bam Adebayo, Iguodala. I mean, Bam's been one of the biggest surprises in the NBA since he's been drafted, which is awesome. But really, I legitimately think the Grizzlies are a better basketball team than the Miami Heat right now. And I know Jimmy Butler's really good. I know that. But in the future, 3-4 years from now, when you've got a team of Ja Morant, Dillon Brooks, Justice Winslow, Dion Waiters, Gorgui Dieng, you've got Grayson Allen off the bench, Tyus Jones, all guys developing pretty well. They're playing at a high level. It's crazy. So now Miami's acting like they got LeBron James. They say, we're going to win the championship now. He's super smart. There's nothing he cannot do. When I get to learn from him, when everyone gets to learn from him, that winning level, that meter is going up in everyone's mind. Now, Andre Iguodala is a great competitor. He's a great basketball player. But he's going to be the guy that teaches you how to win a championship, Jimmy Butler? Not a chance. Period. So when I saw that trade, my first reaction was, why is everyone acting like the Heat just won the Super Bowl? They got fleeced. Iguodala wasn't going to play. All you had to do was wait a couple weeks. They're going to buy him out. But yeah, I mean, the Heat are good. this year. I like their team. I think this move was going to help them, but I don't think it's going to make them a championship team. So, yeah. That's where I take that one away. Now, the last trade I'm going to talk about, because I'm going to skip over the Marcus Morris, LeBron stopper whole ordeal again, right? Every team that's traded for him to stop LeBron has been certainly disappointed, right? It's never worked. So, Bron Stopper's back in LA, trying to rival LeBron. He's not going to be able to do it. So, that one, we're not talking about that one. I just wanted to make that joke. Because it did pretty well on Twitter. I got like 3 likes from people I didn't know. So, now let's get into the trade that made the deadline. This was the biggest trade of the deadline. Absolutely, no questions asked. Here we go. The NBA trade deadline, biggest trade of the deadline. This was between the Wizards and the Timberwolves. And I'm going to preface this as I truly, thoroughly believe both teams got better here. So to me, there is a lot of people going at it about this. Nick Wright says Andrew Wiggins is a bad basketball player. I called him Nick wrong in my notes because he absolutely is. And Matt Barnes and Kendrick Perkins and all these guys, these old heads who were never actually that good in relation to the NBA, were saying, man, this guy's a stud. He's a really good player. He's had, I want to say he got drafted in 2014 or 2015, 5 years to prove that, and he is not. So he is not a really good player, or else he'd prove it. Yes, he's a 20-point scorer. He's extremely inefficient. He is a guy who likes to play in these motion offenses. He's not built to play in that type of offense. He's playing as a more spot-up shooter than an athlete. And that's where the Timberwolves did not utilize him correctly. So yes, this is not good. Wiggins was not great in the role he was in. What Wiggins is an ultra freakish athlete who could jump and touch the top of the backboard. He can fly around. He can defend at a high level when the effort's there. And he can make jump shots when he's open. So, where is he going? To the Bay Area. He's going to San Francisco to play for the Golden State Warriors, a team that will absolutely unlock him. Now, on the other side of this, you got D'Angelo Russell, deloading. Former Ohio State Buckeye, we both went there. He did not graduate, that I'm sure of. I'm not sure, but we both went to the same school, so it's pretty cool. We got a little bit of a connection, if you know what I'm saying. D'Angelo Russell is a pick-and-roll isolation scorer. What that means is he doesn't play off the ball like Steph Curry. He needs the ball in his hands to be great. That's not how the Warriors run things. And when Steve Kerr said it was never going to work from the beginning, I hated that comment. You know, as a coach, you have your system, yes. But to disparage a player for not fitting into your system and not trying to work a way around it is questionable. So he said the fit was questionable when we signed him. Yes, absolutely it was. When you already have Steph and Clay and you had a ball-dominant guard, you can rightfully question the fit. That was one of the reasons the trade rumors started before the season even began. And I think D'Angelo understood that when he signed the contract. Our organization understood that as well. But Bob Myers, the GM of the Warriors, said, we're not going to trade him. He's not coming to be traded. He's coming to play ball. All right, so what was it? Was he going to be traded the whole time or what, you know? And I don't like these Kerr comments. Yes, the fit was questionable when we signed him. But when Steph Curry goes down, when Klay Thompson goes down, there's a few things you could change. You've got a really good center in Kevon Looney. You can run some screens and some ball-dominant stuff for this guy who's ultra talented. And then call sets that fit more of your schematics, all right? So that would work. It's called coaching, Steve Kerr. You've never had to do it because you have all that talent. But that's how it works. And now where is he headed? He is headed to Minnesota, where he's going to get to play with Karl Anthony Towns and be a ball-dominant point guard. Because you know where Karl Anthony Towns thrives? Is in pick-and-roll situations as a picker and a popper. So Karl Anthony Towns is going to be able to pick and pop all day with D'Angelo Russell, and D'Angelo Russell is capable of finding him. He's a really good pick and roll point guard. That's where his biggest strength was, besides isolation in Brooklyn. That's how it worked. So I think both of these people got better. Where my problem is both fan bases disparaging the guy who was traded, and then when the guy gets here, D'Angelo Russell in Minnesota and Andrew Wiggins and the Warriors, already starting trade talk. They've played a game. Andrew Wiggins went like 8 for 12 and scored like 24 points. What do you want from the guy, So, to me, it's just there's these expectations in the league that everyone's either Steph Curry or like LeBron James. That's not the case. You've got really talented basketball players, both of them. You already saw what Wiggins can do in this type of offense. That's why this trade happened. It worked for both teams. And I know D'Lo with Karl Anthony Towns is going to work long term. I think it's going to be a very fruitful relationship. And I think Minnesota could be a good home to both of them. So realistically, the Timberwolves are 14th in the West. The Warriors are 15th in the West. So this trade's not going to matter this year. But next year when Klay Thompson is healthy, next year when Steph Curry's fully healthy and you've got this roster back, and you've got Wiggins, Curry, and Thompson in the same starting lineup with Draymond, that's a pretty versatile lineup. And I think it's going to be pretty solid. I don't think it's a championship lineup. I think they've got to fill out the bench a little bit more. The one gripe I do understand is Wiggins does have a pretty hefty contract coming over, and I don't think the Warriors can really do much about that, and it really hurts the depth they can build. But with the Timberwolves, when you see this trade, it's like, obviously, it makes sense on paper, really, right? To me, it does. So, yeah, absolutely. I think this trade was one of the better trades. I think at the end of the day, both teams got better. That's what you want when you make a trade. We'll see who gets significantly better. So, just looking at the trade deadline grades and, like, who everyone's getting, like, I don't think this one got the best grades. So, the Clint Capella deal was interesting. Now the Rockets don't have a center. So that'll be fun to watch. I don't like Russell Westbrook. I've been very open about it. I don't like the way he plays basketball. And every time I watch him, he scores 40. So it's like, why do I hate this guy? But I do. So what it is, stay on brand. You know what I'm saying? You guys get it. If you listen to me, you get it. So that takes me into my next public speaking category. Remember what I opened with? Football. We've been missing it. Who came to fill that void? The XFL. And to me, the XFL had a very successful first weekend. But before I go into it, I just want to play you a little audio clip.
Where's my football? Where's my smash mouth wide open football? It's gone. The NFL stands for the No Fun League. The XFL is going to be the Extra Fun League. They were competing with the NFL. That's problematic.
Welcome to a new door.
The XFL is accused of selling out the dark side of gratuitous violence, tawdry titillation.
I'm passionate about my football.
Lousy football. You gotta be and scripted low-life garbage.
The guy couldn't wait to get off the field. He's afraid of it.
He's afraid of me. Oh my God. So that's the trailer for This Was the XFL by ESPN. I hope I don't get flagged for copyright stuff. I don't think I used that long. And I gave credit. So I'm not trying to use that as my own. This is the XFL, 30 for 30. Go watch it. It's unbelievable. I've watched it a couple times in my life. It's one of my favorite 30 for 30s. It is so riveting to see Vince McMahon and Ebersol talk about this league and some of these guys around it, like Jerry Jones, talking about this competition that was created. So yes, it's an unbelievable documentary. All the 30 for 30s are. Obviously, that's where I learn a lot of my sports history because I'm a young guy. So yeah, go check out This Is the XFL, and you're really going to see a major contrast. So that's the first part that made Weekend 1 so successful to me. Was just not being WWE, the old Attitude Era type WWE. It was awesome, So getting into it, the first thing you saw was the interview access with the two players at midfield. I'm taking you there. I'm helping you visualize it. The one I remember most was the Matt McGloin, Aaron Murray one. One went for, true, honest, Matt McGloin did with, this is, super meaningful, being able to interview and talk about why this is actually, a really great opportunity for me. And then Aaron Murray kind of went with the safe football quarterback answers. So at midfield, both guys were pretty understanding that this was part of the business. This is we're going to be marketing the players. You've got the former Georgia All-SEC, great passer, and then you've got Matt McGloin, the family man, who's getting one more opportunity to show his kids how good he is at football. So that was the most interesting aspect to me in the interview was Matt McGloin. He's 30 years old. He's a former Penn State quarterback and from Scranton, PA. That's 2 hours away from New York, where they play in MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. So to me, he talked about the ability for his family and children to see him play a game that gave him so much. So that's the first aspect you saw. And it was not the interviews that made it so important, but it was seeing what this meant to the players. Guys are seeking opportunities for a bunch of different reasons. Guys like Matt McGloin have played in the NFL. They've made a good amount of money. They have a nice college career in their back pocket. They moved back to the areas they played the game in. They're going to not eat. They're going to eat for free. They're going to have all this great treatment, but you still have that itch to play. I get that itch every once in a while. So, guys like McGloin are looking for that one last ride of greatness to show their family, I still got it a little bit. And that's what Matt McGloin did the whole game. It was awesome. And then there's guys like P.J. Walker, who got signed to practice squad of the Indianapolis Colts, was invited to participate in the preseason. You got Donnell Pumphrey, leading NCAA rusher. Matt Jones is a guy I hadn't really heard of before the season. He played at a big school, pretty sure it was Florida, and had a really good game. And there's so many guys at this level who are trying to show their potential to the NFL to make that real money. So, yeah, it was awesome. Seeing that interview, seeing that access. The next thing I saw was the Fox broadcast was significantly better than the ESPN broadcast, and having Joel Klatt and Kurt Menefee do the first game was just one of the best business decisions you could have ever made. Joel Klatt is unbelievable at his job. He is so good at doing college football, and Kurt Menefee, he's one of the all-time greats. He's one of the best at broadcasting games. So it was sensational. The Fox television, the defenders, it was unbelievable. One of the funnest aspects of the game was hearing, this was legit. These were real sportscasts. And, ESPN opted for the Levy crew. I know Pat McAfee was on, so they went more for that. And I dig it. I like when McAfee and Hasselbeck are the guys on Thursday night. But, the difference between Fox and ESPN was you have Jenny Taft, you have Joel Klatt, you have all these guys who are consummate, legitimate professionals week in, week out. ESPN went with Levy. I am not sure who the guy, his color commentator was in the booth. And, it was Greg Olson. It was Greg Olson, if I remember right. It was Greg Olson on Fox. Besides the point. So the announcers were great. Greg Olson did the New York Guardians game, and it was awesome. So that was great. And just all in all, it was pretty awesome. Seeing, these are the guys who do the real games. Not to knock the XFL, but when I'm watching Ohio State play, it's Joel Klatt. When I'm watching that 3:30 p.m. afternoon ESPN game, it's Levy. It felt right at home. Absolutely. So the broadcasting was professional. The broadcasting was well done. And that's what was paid for. So the games themselves, I thought they were very entertaining, especially the first two. Cardell Jones, P.J. Walker, and Brandon Silvers all showed flashes of playing quarterback at a higher level. I think you watch Cardell Jones sling that football around, you're like, this dude's got an NFL arm. P.J. Walker and that run-and-shoot June Jones-style offense was extremely fun to watch. And Brandon Silvers threw some picks, but some of those bounced off receivers' chests. And he just showed some flashes. He's got arm strength. He's going to be on an NFL roster come training camp because of this league. Absolutely. I think he's playing extremely well. And the interesting aspect to me is about how the styles are mixing from college and pro. So you're seeing a lot of spread, fun passing concepts, a lot of these spread option zone concepts you see in college with running backs and all that. And you see it being utilized at a professional level. So you see these good athletes doing these fun things like jet sweeps, these trick plays, all this fun stuff. But it is a little less serious than the NFL, and I think that's good, especially for younger viewers. It's more fun. You know, you see these guys running that double flea flicker sort of deal, the double reverse flea flicker Cardell Jones had was one of the best plays of the season. Then even guys like Jordan Teamu, you know, he was a guy who played at Ole Miss sort of during the era where everyone was in trouble there. Hugh Freeze had the prostitutes, that whole situation, and Shea Patterson left him. Teamu stepped up. He was good. He was solid, and he played at a high level. And I didn't realize how athletic he was till he broke off for like a 51-yard run yesterday. But Teamu was playing in these run-and-shoot concepts, and it was fun to watch. Cardell was playing in an offense similar to what Ryan Day does. Pep Hamilton and Ryan Day, similar backgrounds. And it was very awesome to watch similar concepts being utilized at this level. And then, it was P.J. Walker who was let loose in the June Jones run-and-shoot offense. Either way, like, you see these mixes of all that. And then even B.J. Daniels, he came in and ran a lot of zone reads. Like, you don't really see that at the NFL anymore. After Colin Kaepernick sort of made some success with it, you don't really see that as much being utilized. Every once in a while you'll see a pull, but usually it seems like it's a designated pull and not really an actual read. But B.J. Daniels was making reads, so that was cool as well. You know, I thought the quarterback play was pretty good. I think there's two teams in the league that really need help at that position. The first being the Guardians and the second being the Renegades. The LA team does not have a quarterback legitimately. That was pretty bad. The Dallas Renegades, the starter Landry Jones, got hurt in camp. So when he's back, I think they're going to be a significantly better football team. But right now, there's a lot of coaches. So now, you know, you look at the coaches who lost Trestman, Stoops, Zorn, and so forth. Still respectable coaches, you know. I am a guy who's very pro the 8 coaches in this league, and I think it's very well done. And honestly, I was comparing it to the AAF, the Alliance of American Football, that league that was last year. And you sort of look at the coaches in that league, and they had some pretty solid names, but I think a lot of these coaches were closer to the game. I mean, Rick Neuheisel hadn't coached in a while. I don't know who Kevin Coyle or Tim Lewis were. Mike Singletary's a Hall of Fame linebacker, but he hadn't coached in like the NFL for like years. Steve Spurrier is a huge name in the Florida area, but once again, did not play for or did not coach for a while before taking that job. Dennis Erickson, well, he was solid enough, and you know, he was. I thought he was going to be fine, but no, he wasn't. He was also out of coaching for a while at the time. And then Mike Riley, well, he's been pretty bad for quite some time. So, yes, looking at the league, there is talent, there is good coaches, and that's sort of where I want to start. And we're going to do this little quick activity, win/losses XFL Week 1. So the first win to me was the fun new rules. The opportunity to go for 1, 2, or 3 points is sensational. I made the joke on Twitter, and then the XFL made the same tweet about 2 minutes after me at halftime. It was a 16-point game or an 18-point game, something like that. And I said, hey, 2 touchdowns, 2 3-point conversions, you're right back in this. And that was my joke, and I thought it was hilarious. And obviously the XFL did too, because they tweeted that. So that was a fun new rule. I didn't see a lot of 3-point conversion attempts, but most teams stuck it safe. You're going to see analytics sort of driving that with old decision making, but you're going to see like the difference between a 5-yard 2-point attempt and a 10-yard 3-point attempt is not going to be that different percentage wise. Obviously, the 1 point, I think you have the best percentage. It's easier to run for the amount of yardage you need, the 2 yards or whatever it is, than it is to throw for it. And I think most of the time you could come up with a run play that is going to work in that situation. But the funnest and the most significant new rule, all right, this was crazy. The way they lined up for kickoffs, so having the kicker on his 30, having the returner over by his end zone, so the returning end zone, and then having the blockers on the 35 of that, or on the 30 of that side, and the kickoff coverage team on the 30 of the return side, was the best rule I've seen put into football in years. I think that is going to be the precedent for kickoff and keeping it in the game. And I think this is going to be the XFL's legacy if it fails, was this kickoff rule. Because this rule is a lot safer. Instead of having grown men, linebacker size to safety size, running back size, running down full speed at another bunch of dudes running down full speed, you take a lot of the head trauma out of it. And returners and stuff, they'll get going, but once they just have to slow down to avoid the players. So you're not going to get these full speed, full on contact, hard hits that you got from traditional kickoffs. And I think that is one of the most powerful aspects of this league, is that new rule. I'd trademark the hell out of it if I was the XFL, because that is something that you can sell. I think that's something that all the leagues need to be doing. And I think it's fun watching those guys stopped while the ball's in the air waiting for the guy to catch, and then everyone runs. It's very playground, but it's very defined, strict, it's professional. I think it's safer. I think of all the things I'm going to take away from that week 1 was that rule and how it actually looked on the field. So that was the first win for the XFL. The fun new rules, absolutely. The 1-point conversion, 2-point conversion, 3-point conversion, sensational. The new kickoff rules, unbelievable. There is literally nothing better from the league than that so far. And that is why I'll be tuning in every week. It's the fun new kickoff rule, obviously. So the first loss for the XFL this week, though. So this is wins and losses. It wasn't perfect. All right, we're going to coin that. It was not perfect. The lack of familiar names, teams, players. I'd say, what is one thing that drives me to being an Ohio State fan? Before, it was just the family growing up in it, the long time. My grandpa loved them, my dad loved them, so I loved them. You obviously don't have that with the XFL. The LA Guardians, or the LA Wildcats, what are they going to provide to me that, being from California doesn't mean anything to me to be an LA Wildcats fan. Being the one team I do like is the DC Defenders because of the Ohio State players that are on it. Tracy Sprinkle, Cardell Jones, and Dorian Grant. So you take those two combinations and you add them together. Yeah, there's not a lot of familiar players to a lot of non-football people. And I'm a football guy, and there's still a lot of names I didn't know. So the lack of familiarity to the teams is going to be tough. The Renegades, the whatever the Houston team is called. I still don't even know all the names. I just know where they're at this point. So the Memphis team, yeah. So yeah, it's cool. I think this has been a great league so far. We'll look up the teams real quick to give them their credit. I even did a preview on them. I still can't remember it. So it's the Battlehawks, the Roughnecks, the Dragons, the Renegades, the Vipers, the Guardians, the Defenders, the Wildcats. So, yeah, a lot of those. I think the DC Defenders is the most memorable name for some reason. I like the Dallas Renegades, too. That might be my Thursday show. I'm going to rank these names in order and why. So be ready to tune in for that. That'll be fun. But, yeah, so that's a loss. Lack of familiarity. Obviously, I couldn't remember the names of them. I could remember where they were, but New York Guardians, where's that come from, The next win is respectable coaches. The list of XFL coaches is pretty insane. And seeing what some of these guys did, there is so much coaching experience in the XFL right now that you sort of look at that crazily, So let's go through it. Like Bob Stoops is a national championship winning college football coach. That's the truth. He's probably the biggest name in this league. He's the top 25 winningest coach in college football history. You know him. He coached at Oklahoma, 10 Big 12 championships, one of a heck of a career, 3 BCS appearances in the national title game, won one of them. Only BCS coach to win a Rose Bowl, Orange Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, and Sugar Bowl. That's crazy. So then you go to the DC Defenders, and you got Pep Hamilton, one of the original quarterback gurus. Could change your whole team with it. 21 years of coaching experience. Stops at Baltimore, the Jets, the 49ers, the Bears, the Colts, and the Browns. He was the offensive coordinator at Stanford and for the Colts. And most recently, the OC for the University of Michigan and assistant head coach. So the offensive coordinator for them is Tanner Erngstead, worked with Hamilton on Michigan, so a lot of those are all connected. June Jones, 34 years of coaching experience, college, CFL, NFL, 22 years as head coach, 148, 134, invented the run and shoot. Hawaii QBs Timmy Chang, Colt Brennan set almost every NCAA passing record you could imagine. 2-time WAC champion. Changed football. Offense coordinator. Oh, we're not doing that. Los Angeles Wildcat Winston Moss. This is the only one I don't know, but he was a linebacker for University of Miami. 11-year playing career in the NFL. Assistant head coach, / linebacker coach for the Green Bay Packers. A Super Bowl winning coach. So that's huge. I just said we're not doing OCs, but Norm Chow, one of the best offensive minds in all of the history of sports. That's who I'm under his tree when it comes to learning about offensive football. The New York Guardians, Kevin Gilbride, won 2 Super Bowls in New York as the offensive coordinator. The guy knows his offense. The defense, not doing that. St. Louis Battlehawks, Jonathan Hayes, 12-year career as a tight end with Kansas City Chiefs, Pittsburgh Steelers, second-round pick. Tight end coach for 15 years for the Bengals. Tight ends coach, special teams coordinator for Bob Stoops at Oklahoma, including the national championship. Another national championship winning coach. The Seattle Dragons, Jim Zorn's got 25 years of coaching experience, including 19 as, the actual OG quarterback guru. 2 years as an NFL head coach. You just read through it and it's like, wow, this guy's done a lot. Then you keep going down. The Vipers, Mark Trestman, 3-time Grey Cup champion as a head coach, 2-time coach of the year. 85-73 overall as a head coach with the Bears, and including 2 years with the Bears. Coaches you respect. That's one thing. I think it was who was it? I think it was Greg Olson. He said it himself. He's like, there's a lot of coaches in this league, like in football circles, that you respect, just plain and simple. So that's crazy. The next loss, coaches who manage games like the NFL and college. This is a big loss. You have so many different options. Don't punt. What's the point? Go for it. And once you get down and you're down like 9 points, guess what? Try to score. Score 9 points. You can do that now. So managing games like NFL and college is going to be sort of the precedent. I think you got to manage these games more like the Canadian Football League. A lot more, they've got 3 downs to do it in Canada. I think that's how you got to treat this. You've got 3 downs to do it. And then on 4th down, if you're intermediately close, you got to go for it. That's how you got to do it. Especially since, when you can go for 2 and 3, the points start becoming worth more. And you can't leave points on the field. You can't leave points on the table. So it's a loss that coaches manage games like the NFL and college and did not try to utilize the new rules to their advantage. When the games were exciting, I think 3 of the 4 games were really interesting, really exciting. The only one that didn't seem interesting at all was the LA Wildcats game. That game kind of seemed awful. But there was sensational quarterback play in it by one side, if I remember correctly. So, the Houston Roughnecks really went off that game, and P.J. Walker was unbelievable. But from the standpoint, it wasn't that great. St. Louis Battlehawks, that one was fun. That was a defensive battle. The Guardians, watching that second half was pretty boring. I thought the Vipers would be able to mount a comeback. They did not. So, as a whole, I think the league had its great wins and it had some tough losses. And the last final loss was drops in tackling. I think you could really see the difference between an NFL wide receiver and an XFL wide receiver in these games. And throughout training camp, you obviously don't want to push these guys too hard tackling, but working on tackling fundamentals is going to be a huge aspect moving forward for the XFL. And that is wins and losses from the XFL Week 1. So my next segment's a little fun one I came up with. It's called The Leagues of Failures Past. The Leagues of Failures Past are former football leagues that are now defunct, that failed, some in epic proportions, some because they just were not viable, and others because they became part of what is now known as the National Football League. So to get this thing started, the first league of failures past is the most recent league of failures past, and the more you read into it, the more this failure hurts. The Alliance of American Football. It doesn't even have league in its name. Everyone sort of got excited for it, but by week 4 or 5, the league went bankrupt. So, the controlling owner, Thomas Dundon, was the owner of the Charlotte, Carolina Hurricanes. That's right. They're like one of the worst owned franchises before him. So it was founded by Charlie Ebersol and Bill Polian. And the AAF began play February 9, 2019, 6 days after the NFL ended. The league was scheduled to have a 10-week regular season and conclude with a championship game on April 27th, but after 8 weeks of play, the league's football operations were suspended. So after 2 days after the suspension, they filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy and the league died. But the biggest failures of this league came from the idea that this league had any relevance to the world. So, the AAF was overseen by former NFL general manager Bill Polian, former Pittsburgh Steelers safety Troy Polamalu, and former executive J.K. McKay. There were tons of advisors, including Hines Ward, Justin Tuck, and Mike Pereira, and Charlie Ebersol's father, Dick Ebersol, who you now know was part of the original team that tried creating the original XFL. So, the idea was to create a league, a spring league, right? And they failed at it. The difference between this league and the XFL currently is that the XFL has significant financial backing from one source. The financial backing for the AAF came from a lot of different angel investors. And once the TV ratings kept plummeting, the majority controlling owner, Thomas Dundon, said, "This is enough. We can't do this anymore." So they suspended it. And as the leagues kept going, everyone said, well, we need to continue playing to try to make this money back, which was not going to happen. When you look at attendance figures, when you look at the money that was being owed to players, the league was unsustainable. So once this was filed for bankruptcy, the league claimed assets of $11.3 million, liabilities of $48.3 million, and approximately $536,000 in cash. The AAF counted its players' contracts among its assets in the bankruptcy filing, blocking players from joining the CFL. This block was lifted a day after the bankruptcy. So many of the players in this league, the American Alliance of Football, the Alliance of American Football, I can't even remember the name, and I'm reading it. It started off, it had partnerships with CBS Sports, the NFL Network, and Turner Sports. You already see the benefit of having the XFL on ABC and Fox. It's right there. So, yes, this league blew up in flames. It gave us one good thing, Greg Ward Jr., the best receiver on the Philadelphia Eagles. So, there we go. Now, the next defunct league now that I want to talk about is the Arena Football League. And I loved the Arena Football League. I actually wanted to play in the Arena Football League. So I grew up in Park City, Utah, which is about 35 minutes. It's technically a suburb of Salt Lake City, Utah. And if you don't know, it's where the rich go to party in the snow for their movies at Sundance Film Festival. So the Arena Football League was played on a 50-yard field. It was inside. It was trying to emulate the high-scoring feel of a basketball game, but in a football setting. So the AFL was a 22-season. It survived 22 seasons from 1987 to 2008, and internal issues caused it to cancel in 2009. But this was a league that knew itself, and it knew where it belonged, and it didn't become a problem until sort of interest in the market sort of started fading. a lot of that came with them not modernizing quick enough and not assuring that there was going to be places to play games. So in 2008, the longtime 12-year commissioner of the AFL, David Baker, retired unexpectedly just 2 days before the Arena Bowl 22. And then after that, it all started going downhill. Some of the teams themselves that were privately owned filed for bankruptcy because they could not afford to keep up the demand and the cost of what it is to be. So the AFL tried to get people to buy it, and there was $100 million stakes, and that was too much for it. So then they canceled the 2009 season, and that is what happened. And then they relaunched in 2010 to 2014, and apparently had rockstar owners. The LA Kiss became a team. There was Kenny Guiden played in it, a former Ohio State player. And it was a lot of fun to get that back. And then Contraction, 2015 to 2017. It was back, and they started playing games again. So there is still technically an AFL, and then they filed for bankruptcy again. So it failed twice. And this one had a beautiful run because this league knew what it was. It even got a video game. And that was the most fun football video game I think I ever played. You could score like 100 points in games. You'd show your friends it, and you know how to play, and they wouldn't. And it's a whole different style of football. And it's way more like the Canadian Football League than the National Football League. But it is a game where it's just fun. It was fun. I remember going to Utah Blaze games. I got a signature from Joe Germain on my hat. Got the whole team to sign a football. They used to do this fun thing after games where you got to meet all the players and get their autographs and signatures, and that was awesome. And they created an awesome fan experience. And then it just sort of started falling apart with leadership changes and all that stuff. So the next league on the list that failed was the USFL. Good old Donald Trump, the president of the United States League, was a colossal failure. It was founded in 1982 as a spring football league and was doing actually really well and becoming a pretty viable spring-summer schedule. It was playing really well through 1986, and the season was scheduled to play in autumn and winter, directly competing against the long-established NFL. So now, what was one of the problems I listed for the XFL is they don't have long-established name brands that families and people are connected to. So guess what? Neither did the USFL. But the USFL took some gambles and got some really talented players. And many coaches and teams and executives had NFL experience. And many future top NFL players and coaches got their start in this new league. So when you look at the players that were in this league, it is pretty notable. And you'll see guys like Herschel Walker, Jim Kelly, Reggie White, Anthony Carter, Sam Mills, Doug Flutie. Steve Young played in it for the Los Angeles team, Tim Spencer, Brian Sipe. So many names played in the USFL, and so many people got their start in the USFL. When you look at the players, the coaches, and all that fun stuff, it's one of those leagues that actually really gave a lot to another league, but it wasn't the greatest league. It was poorly ran by owners, and one of the aspects that kind of highlights the failure is Donald Trump's egotism and many of the owners trying to switch the schedule to the autumn and winter, believing that a lesser product, a less established product, could compete with such a well-established product in the NFL, and it couldn't. And it was very, very apparent that it couldn't. And then they filed for bankruptcy following that year because they lost so much money. There's also a great 30 for 30 on this failed football league. So failed football leagues make for great documentaries. But yeah, so the USFL failed. You got Steve Young out of it. You got Brian Kelly out of it. Two of the best quarterbacks to ever play in the NFL. And that was it. A few coaches got their start there and ended up being great. Now this league is a little bit smaller. This is a smaller scale. It was the World League of American Football, later renamed NFL Europe League, and it was a professional American football league which operated between 1991 and 2007 that was backed by the NFL, the largest league in the United States, and it all ended with the World Bowl. So now it became a spring league. 7 of the 10 teams were based in North America and the other 3 in Europe. This format lasted for 2 seasons with no league in 1993 and 94. Then the WLFA, the World League of American Football, returned in 1995 with 6 teams, all in Europe. And in 1998, the league was rebranded as NFL Europe League, or NFL Europe, until 2006. So when you look at the teams involved, there were quite a few teams that were. The Amsterdam Admirals were very popular, the Barcelona Dragons, the Berlin Thunder, Cologne Centurions, Frankfurt Galaxy, Hamburg Sea Devils, the London England Monarchs, the Rain Fire, and the Scottish Claymores. There were that weird sort of... So what this was to me, that first part, was a tester to see if it was viable to have teams in the United States travel to England and Europe and play games there. So those original United States teams functioned as testers for if the NFL could be viable in Europe. And now more and more every year, you start seeing these stadium partnerships with the NFL in Europe, and you start seeing these games played every year in Europe, and it starts becoming more of a conversation piece that there's going to be an NFL team in Europe someday. So what the NFL Europe did show to the world was that football was viable outside of America, and that people would tune in to watch it. It lasted 17 years, mostly because of the financial backing from the NFL. But you take a look at the history and you look at the list of players that came from this league. You've got guys like Kurt Warner. He played for the Amsterdam Admirals, as well as Adam Vinatieri, who was the kicker for them and became the greatest kicker in football history. Then you got William the Refrigerator Perry, who launched his comeback playing for the London Monarchs. Jake Delhomme played in a Super Bowl, long career in the NFL. James Harrison started his football career in the NFL for the Rain Fire. Brad Johnson played in a Super Bowl for Tampa Bay. David Akers, Berlin Thunder, longtime Eagles kicker. Dante Hall, the Scottish Claymores, the best player to come from the NFL Europe, arguably the most versatile one for sure. And then this one, number 9, Terry Crews and Isaiah Mustafa. Terry Crews was a defensive end for the Rain Fire, and Isaiah Mustafa was a wide receiver for the Barcelona Dragons. Now, these names may not be as familiar. Terry Crews definitely. Isaiah Mustafa not as much. Both Old Spice guys. Smell like a man. And then John Kitna, QB for the Barcelona Dragons. So there was quite a bit of talent that actually came from NFL Europe, that was scouted in NFL Europe, that came to the NFL. So that league was honestly one of the more successful ones. And then the last league I am going to talk about is the American Football League. Yes, the very one that is now part of the NFL as a football conference. What league goes from being a league of its own to a conference? I don't know. It's been pretty successful since then. But yes, this was a leagues of failures past. Yeah, so, I mean, failure sucks. But at the end of the day, everyone fails at something. And these football leagues, some of them provided us with some great stories. Some of them provided us with great documentaries. And some of us provided... Like the XFL provided the NFL with so much inside stuff for the fan, for the viewer, that it really did change the way we viewed the sport of football. And that's something you cannot scoff at. Absolutely not. So that's sort of going to be my finish up on expansion leagues and new leagues and that for the day. I want to give a highlight something really quick. I don't usually do this because I don't usually read. But one of my favorite sports writers, Andy Staples, recommended a book on his Twitter. He helped write it, apparently. And it's by a man by the name of Trevor Moawad. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's Trevor. And then Moawad. The book is called It Takes What It Takes. How to Think Neutrally and Gain Control of Your Life. So I'm about halfway through it right now, and I'm already using quite a few of his principles. And just the way you react to situations can alter the way your mood is, and that changes the way you are ready to prepare. And the main teachings of it are, rather than thinking positively, which will change the expectations of events, and rather than thinking pessimistically, it's about thinking neutrally. Think about what you can control. Think about these little aspects of life. So I always have preached to myself, control what you can control. There's no reason you should worry about that thing that's happening 6 months from now. Control the steps leading up to it. That's how I've always told myself, you know. And in this book, it kind of reassured those thoughts. You know, Russell Wilson's a guy he talks about the most in the book. It's Trevor Moawad, his best friend. And they work together very closely in getting the mental aspect of Russell Wilson's game correctly. You always wonder why Russell is so level-headed. 90% of that's natural. The other 10% is taking those steps to reaffirm his beliefs on why that is going to work. Why neutral thinking is truly the best way to think, and it's an unbelievable book. And if you work in the business world, if you work in sports, if you're a student, it really helps you. It really helps change the mindset you need every day. So I just wanted to give that book a quick shout out. I think it's awesome. I am trying to read more because as I realized 2 months or a month and a half after graduating is even though I'm reading a lot of academic stuff that I don't like, it is still making me a smarter person. So reading is something that helps, and reading sports articles and all that stuff every day is great. But you also need to change your perspective a little bit and find a book that does that, whether it be a nonfiction story, a fiction story, something that you can evaluate, break down, see the roots of the book, and see what it is trying to say. And that is something that I really liked finding in this book. So now that I've shouted out this new book, and I'm going to be talking about it a lot to my friends and my family and my girlfriend, it's time to talk about what's going on around sports. So the first thing I want to touch on is Jon Jones versus Dominic Reyes. Controversial ending to this fight. A lot of people had Reyes as the winner. Jon Jones won by unanimous decision. The one controversy about this is there was a judge who scored the fight 49-46 in favor of Jon Jones. Many people think the Texas Commission that handles fights such as boxing and UFC did not have enough experience to judge a fight of this magnitude. And to be honest, most people were probably right. I was talking to a good friend of mine. His name is Nick Haynes. He is very into the UFC. He scored the fight and said Jones could have possibly won, but the way he scored the fight, it was at least a split decision. And I sort of saw that through the Twitter sentiment and all that stuff. And seeing Dana White's interview after was very telling. He said people are pissed, and people have the right to be pissed. And now I'm not going to knock Jones for winning, but all the people involved, White, Rogan, blast insane 49-46 scorecard. Two judges score the close main event 48-47 in champion's favor, but third has Jones winning 4 rounds. That was what threw people off. Joe Rogan post-fight said it was disrespectful to the performance of Reyes. And this is sort of, I'm trying to find the video real quick as I'm scanning through because I can't do it justice. But it's crazy. Jon Jones won. He stayed champions. I think the only fair thing to do is give Dominic Reyes a rematch because he went toe-to-toe with Jones. I think I didn't watch the fight, but the sentiment is that it was a 3-2 fight one way or the other. And many people believed Reyes won. And so this is a quote from Rogan, and he was the commentator of the match. It's a huge match. So he spent no time on his back. He was never eating punches. He was never taking any damage, and there were never any submission attempts. There clearly is a giant issue with judges not knowing mixed martial arts. There's just so much more to it than boxing. And many people echoed this. They said this was not a boxing fight, and they had judges who had more experience judging boxing than mixed martial arts fighting. So my friend said the one thing they need to do is unionize. Get consistent judging. Now, that doesn't work with the fighting world, in my belief, because each state has an athletic commission, and they are responsible for the fights. And when there was a huge fight in New York, a lot of people thought that was going to be a problem because New York did not have the experience judging UFC fights. And this has happened time and time again throughout the United States. Some states just aren't equipped with UFC knowledge judges. And that should not ever be the case. And either there's two ways to fix this. You unionize and get consistent MMA judges to do the fights like referees, because it is as important as a referee in the middle of the octagon, if not more, because they actually decide fight outcomes. So you either make that change, all right, or you create a requirement for athletic commissions to meet expectations of knowledge of mixed martial arts and have them pass tests and all that stuff to be able to judge a fight. Now, the last major fight, we had Conor McGregor shouldering Cowboy Cerrone, and Stephen A. Smith made himself seem like an imbecile. Now, this one, you have judges being questioned, and this is not good for the UFC brand at all. So that's one thing. It needs to get fixed. It needs to get fixed fast. So I think that's the next aspect that's coming, is either getting a full-on or judge commission. The fighters unionize, get consistent judging, similar to how they have Herb Dean and the same refs for almost every single fight matchup. And then you have the UFC work closely with athletic commissions to get judges that are knowledgeable in the MMA that pass and get certification to judge. Because you can't have guys or people lacking the knowledge and deciding fights like that. Because that changes Dominic Reyes' career. He is no longer an undefeated fighter. John Jones is still the light heavyweight champion, and it worked well for one person, but it really hurt another person. And I think reputation-wise, Dominic Reyes is going to come out better than worse for losing this fight. And if he won the fight, it would have been what he deserved. So that is what is happening around the UFC. Now for the NFL, we've got a little bit of NFL conversation, and I wanted to take a look at the combine invites per conference. This list put out by the NFL Draft website talked about the most players invited to the 2020 NFL Combine. This is directly from the NFL Draft Twitter. So who do you think's leading the way? It's the SEC with 93 players invited. The Big Ten is second with 57. The Pac-12 is 47, has third with 47. The ACC has 35, and the Big 12 has 29. The AAC is 20th. The Mountain West Conference is 12th, Conference USA is 11th, and Sun Belt is 7th. And then the rest of the conferences have less than that. So there's two aspects that are telling. The SEC is still reigning supreme from a per talent standpoint when it comes to player by player. Absolutely. 93 players invited, that's huge. The Big Ten, to me, is second still. You can sort of see it once you start getting to the bottom level of the conferences. You'll still have a flashy player on the worst SEC team, and in the Big Ten at like Rutgers, you do not have those same type of players, but you will now. Greg Schiano's getting that flipped around, and I think you see that 93, and you wonder why. I don't think this is definitive why there's an SEC bias. There is 93 players getting invited this year, and that can fluctuate year in and year out, and I'm trying to find the right words to put this in perspective. The difference between the Big Ten and the SEC has always been coaching. The Big Ten has always had better coaches. The SEC has always had a little bit more talented of players. The Pac-12 is not as far behind as people think. It has always been the third best conference to me, and they haven't had a playoff contributor since Washington got smoked, so the bias of this is starting to fall apart. But they've been a solid conference, and they have beat each other up quite a bit throughout. That 9-game conference schedule has hurt them a lot more than it's hurt the Big Ten, because they don't have that team that's insurmountably better than everybody else, like the SEC has had with Alabama and like the Big Ten has had with Ohio State. The Pac-12 has sort of struggled with having that dominant team at the top. The ACC, I'm going to assume Clemson's responsible for a third of the players the ACC is getting invited to this combine. And the Big 12 is getting worse and worse year in and year out. I have been saying this for a couple of years that I think the Big 12 is the least talented conference, and it shows every single time they play a team in the Big 10 or the SEC. I think the Big 12 is worse than the ACC. I think they are the worst conference in the sport. They have Texas, they have Oklahoma. Baylor was good last year, but from a talent standpoint, those teams can't hold the light of the other teams. They just do not have the level of talent. The fact the AAC is getting as many players invited to the Combine almost as the Big 12 and the ACC says a lot. And I think that says more about the AAC than the other two conferences. And the AAC needs to start demanding more respect because they're a real competitive league. And I think once they start winning at a higher level, hopefully, you're going to start getting a Power 6. And I think the commissioner, everyone looked at him like he was crazy, but he believes in his teams. And they just retained Luke Fickell from Michigan State today. So that says a lot. So I think really there's SEC bias. It's not because of the talent. It's because the best teams are consistently the best there. The ACC is still falling off. It hurts a lot that for the ACC that Miami's bad, that Florida State's bad, that some of their bigger premier blue bloods are bad. The SEC is surviving because they have 6 to 7 teams that are competing at an extremely high level on both sides every year. And the Big Ten is really surviving because of 3 or 4 top teams. So it says a lot. I don't think it is definitive on why the conferences are so much better and so much worse. I think this year, when you look at the top of the conferences in order, it still pretty much follows that. The SEC was the best, the Big Ten was the second best, the ACC was the third best, the Pac-12 was the fourth best, and the Big 12 was the fifth best. And I think that stayed consistent at the top for years, but when you go from complete conference depth, it's a little different. So that's the NFL draft I wanted to talk about in college football. Now, the NFL, there's some huge quarterback conversations about contract talks, and it's Dak Prescott and Tom Brady. Both of these guys deserve a lot of money. We know that. Brady is a different case than Dak because at this point you'd be paying him for the stability of the organization and what he has done for you. Brady needs some more weapons around him to flourish at his fleeting age, but not much changed statistically from 2018 and 19. So I've got Tom Brady's stats from last year and this year pulled up on Pro Football Reference. So the 2019 game. So let's go 2019 and 2020. So when you look at his stats, I want to see season by season. In 2018, Tom Brady threw for 4,300 yards, 29 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. In 2019, at 42 years old, he threw for 24 touchdowns to 8 picks, with significantly worse weapons. So, his worst year statistically in a yardage standpoint was when he was 39, but he had a 28-2 touchdown to interception ratio. Tom Brady is playing at the same level he's always played. Yes, his arm is getting a little weaker, but whose doesn't? Will he hit the wall? He already has, so he's not going to get worse, I don't believe. I think next year, if they can get a true number one to go across from N'Keal Harry, you get another really good tight end, and you're right back to the Patriots that won the Super Bowl. They weren't that far off. They went 12-4. I don't think the NFC East is getting significantly better, so you pay for that stability. You continue to draft good offensive skill players, and you rely on Tom Brady's experience and leadership to get you to 13-3. And you hope the defense can hold against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, on the other side of this, you have Dak Prescott. And this was a tweet and a replies that I saw because I get in this bad habit where I look at tweets and then I look at replies for like 10 minutes. This one actually stood out to me, and I think this was actually one of the smartest things I've seen said on Twitter. If someone told you to let your boss tell you what you are worth to the company, a lot of people would be very unhappy with what their bosses had to say. So why is everyone so mad at Dak for demanding $35 million? I don't think he's crazy. I think when you look at the market of quarterbacks, and this tweet legitimately changed my perspective a little bit. Dak Prescott's no worse than a $35 million quarterback. Dak Prescott is a top 10 starter in the NFL. And if you can name quarterback, how many quarterbacks can you really name that are better than Dak Prescott? You know, the list isn't long. You've got, let's start at the top. Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. Then you get into that second tier, and it's like Drew Brees. He's up there. Tom Brady, I'd still take over Dak Prescott. And then you start getting into this area with the guys like Kirk Cousins, the Matt Ryans, the Cam Newtons, these guys that are good quarterbacks that have played at a high level in their career. But realistically, who in the league is significantly better than Dak Prescott? There's like 5 or 6 guys, maybe, that are definitively significantly better than Dak. The rest of the league is either worse than Dak or about equal footing. And when you look at the guys who have been paid on that equal footing, the Matt Staffords, the Jared Goffs, the Derek Carrs, these guys are getting paid that $30 to $35 million range. And Dak is better than a lot of those guys. Legitimately. So is he worth $36, $37 million? Maybe not in a traditional sense, but what the market is at, Dak Prescott is worth $35 to $38 million. Is he worth being the first $40 million quarterback? Absolutely not. But he deserves top tier quarterback money because of the consistency he provides to the organization. The floor with the Dak Prescott led team is 8 wins. That is a great floor to have. That is very similar to the Kirk Cousins floor. And when you look at how much Kirk Cousins makes year in and year out, he very much is very similar to Kirk Cousins. I think when you look at contracts, when you look at how much Dak Prescott's worth, he deserves more than Kirk Cousins because he's a little bit younger. And he's proven that he's won quite a bit. Kirk Cousins is making that $28 to $30 million a year. I think Dak Prescott's better than Matt Ryan. He's younger than Matt Ryan, and I think he deserves more money than those guys. So you really look at this holistically, and you think, man, you know what? In the right situation, Dak can win a Super Bowl. Lesser quarterbacks have. Trent Dilfer's won a Super Bowl. Brad Johnson has played for a Super Bowl. I don't know if he's won it. I think he has. You know, so it's not impossible to win a Super Bowl with Dak. He needs the right situation, absolutely. But you can do a lot worse than Dak. And there are not a lot of better quarterbacks out there. So, yes, Dak deserves it. Both of these guys deserve the money they are worth. And that is what is the news with the NFL quarterback contract talks. So the next one's Mookie Betts to Los Angeles. It constantly got worse. And when I planned this show yesterday, the trade had not happened. But the trade finally went through. All teams agreed to it. And I'm going to spare you the details of who is going where. But the most important one is Mookie to the Dodgers. There are 2 important conversations that need to be had about this. The fact that the Red Sox almost backed out almost like a week ago, a couple days after it happened. And the Twins almost backed out. That made this trade unfathomable to follow. Jeff Passan, this is where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with the reporters. They jumped the gun, absolutely. They reported the deal before it was concluded. So now you're messing with families' livelihoods. And I get the job of a reporter is to report what you're hearing when you're hearing it. And sources confirm that. Jeff Passan's a really good reporter, but in this case, I think he messed up a little bit. And being first is less important than being accurate. And when you force these teams' hands as a reporter to complete and finalize a deal, you're adding pressure to the fan base. Red Sox fans were upset that Mookie was going and they weren't paying the money, so everyone was saying that the Red Sox got fleeced, and the Red Sox are like, no, we did not. We did not get fleeced, and they wanted to back out. The Twins almost backed out because they didn't feel like they were getting enough in this trade. So the reporters jumped the gun, reported what they thought, and then everyone's like, well, maybe we won't make this trade. All right, so now you're hurting the teams. You're hurting the fans. You're hurting the families involved. One of the rules in the SPJ Code of Ethics is to do no harm or to minimize the harm done. Reporters, when they jump the gun on trades and deals like this, cause harm to livelihoods. And that's not good. That is not following the Code of Ethics. And that is the first one. The second one is the Red Sox and Twins getting pressured by fans to back out of this. How dumb can you be as a team? Stick to your guns. It's way worse when you think about backing out because then everyone's like, oh, the fans control you, ownership, the fans control the general managers. How dumb can you be? Why would you let that happen? Why would you let that narrative get out? Just make the trade. You already had the deal. If you thought it was a bad deal, why would you make it in the first place? And if you thought it was a good deal, why would you be fearing the fans for backing out, you know? What happened? And that's what happened. Mookie Betts is going to LA. The Red Sox got quite a few players. The Twins got somebody, all that stuff happened, and it was very annoying. So to close this show out, the reporters, do your job better. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chris Rennie Show. And then also do not forget to check out my sports blog. I'm writing a really interesting in-depth piece on the XFL and why it can be successful. Go to withoutwinners.com. It is my WordPress. It is my endeavor into sports writing. There is one piece, and now there's going to be a second. And I'm going to try to keep coming out with a weekly piece similar to a column or an interesting report on something I can do with just internet searches. Anyways, thanks for listening once again. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. This is your host, Christopher Rennie, signing out. Adios, senors and senoritas.